Newt Gingrich is with us. All right, so you hear it now yourself. Kick them, and we can't be civil, and, you know, women are being run out of restaurants. Pam Bondi, Secretary Nielsen, and, of course, Sarah Sanders, Ted Cruz and his wife. Now we have mob violence in Portland and New York, and we've got two Republicans punched in Minnesota. Welcome to, I guess, the world of Maxine Waters. Get a crowd and tell them and follow them into gas stations, department stores, and restaurants, and you tell them we don't want them nowhere, any point, any time. I mean, is that the new America? Because I don't remember that America.
Well, that's certainly the America of the desperate left, because they're losing. The more they lose, the more desperate they get. And I think it will get worse before it gets better, because I think they're going to keep losing. And I think that they are so alienated from most Americans that all they have left is this kind of nihilistic violence, which in the end I think turns people off. It's also a little scary because, as Steve Scalise proved when he was shot, you know, if you're conservative and you're in public life, there's a certain danger level now that is totally un-American, and that comes entirely from the left.
You know, the thing is that's missing, and you figured out, I mean, I watched the whole process when you became Speaker. It didn't happen overnight. It started with a series of videotapes about running to transform America, and it was called Renewing American Civilization. When did you first put those tapes out?
We first began working on it in 92 and did the first wave of tapes in 93, and then did a second wave after I was Speaker in 95.
And it was all based on ideas culminating in a contract with America. And I think people forget because, you know, we've had waves of conservatism. Maybe if you want to start with Barry Goldwater, that's one. It wasn't successful, but it was the beginning. Reagan's victory in 1980 and then subsequently in 84, that was another big victory. And obviously the Republicans taking over Congress for the first time in 40 years with your contract. And I'd argue Donald Trump is the fourth leg. And that is everything he is doing in terms of governance is conservative. Even threatened trade wars, they're not materializing because that's never been his intention. His intention is for better trade deals, freer, fairer deals.
Yeah, I think he is the fourth cycle, if you will, of moving back from a left-wing America, and we've been gaining momentum and gaining clarity. And as I often tell people, you know, we didn't have Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society with so many good, solid, conservative lawyers that we could fill up all these judicial appointments. And that's just a huge advantage. And it all grows out of what is now, if you go back to Goldwater, a 54-year movement. But I think it's also coming to a crisis because Trump so clearly articulates a pro-American, pro-work ethic, pro-patriotism policy that he drives the left crazy. And I think as a result, the left, which has gotten more extreme, they haven't modulated, they haven't come back to the center. They've decided that their job is to beat up and intimidate those of us who disagree with them. And in the end, I think that just further isolates them.
So their agenda's pretty clear. They get back the House. They want impeachment. They want the crumbs back, the largest tax cut in history, which is obviously having a big impact on the economy. You know all the record unemployment numbers, the varying demographic groups that are doing better than they've ever done. They also want open borders, but John Podesta is saying don't talk about immigration. They want to eliminate ICE. They want to keep Obamacare. An endless investigation, I would add to that. I don't hear one positive thing that's going to create one job or make this country one bit safer. Nothing that they're running on. Just that and we hate Trump. That's it.
Well, I think that's right, and it's partly because if they tried to tell us honestly what they stand for, they would be defeated so badly that they know that they can't afford to be honest. But I think, and I mentioned this on your TV show last night, I think that we're about to be at a magic moment in American history. And I think the two words that captured it in my mind are Kavanaugh and caravan. I think Kavanaugh, the way they treated him, the viciousness, the smears, the character assassination, the childish behavior by U.S. senators in Senate meetings, I think all that came together to really regalvanize conservatives. And I think this caravan coming up from Guatemala should be a major focus of Republicans for the next couple of weeks, because it makes clear the argument about whether or not we have a right to be a sovereign country, or whether in the Feinstein, Pelosi, San Francisco Democrat tradition, we have an obligation to open up our border to anybody who can get financed. And remember, these 3,000 people, I agree with Laura Ingraham, who's asking the question, who's paying for this? These 3,000 people probably cost $21 million to move from Guatemala.
It's actually 4,000 people it's now grown to, amid a spike in U.S. border crossings. But, you know, Nancy Pelosi actually said, we are not funding the border wall. And that just it seems to be an appendage to Donald Trump's manhood. I mean, you know, imagine anything similar said about any woman by any Republican or conservative. I mean, it's outrageous, the double standard, and so flagrant. But, you know, we already have paid between health care, education, criminal justice. We've already paid trillions of dollars for people that didn't respect our laws and sovereignty. It's cost the American people a fortune. And by the way, the people of California now are going to be paying for their health care for free, no questions asked.
And by the way, we have in Georgia a Democratic nominee for governor, Stacey Abrams, who clearly favors allowing illegal immigrants to vote, says that she doesn't want to draw any distinction between people who are American citizens and people who came here illegally. And that's sort of typical. You have Gavin Newsom, candidate for governor of California, who openly says he wants to have government-run health care and make it available to every illegal immigrant who can get to California. I mean, the Democratic Party is becoming the party of illegality, the party of breaking the law, the point you made earlier, and a party which believes it can't win with legal American votes, and so it's got to try to find some way to drown the system. And it's an amazing thing to watch develop.
We're going to get Newt Gingrich's prediction, 19 days till Election Day. Also his take on the Khashoggi, looks like murder, and who's responsible, and how the president should handle this, as it involves the Saudi and the Saudi government and the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. All right, as we continue, Newt Gingrich is with us. 800-941-SEAN is our number. We're in Palm Beach, Florida today. I want to go to this issue of this reporter, this guy with the Washington Post. He's not a New York, he's not an American citizen, lived for a long time in Saudi Arabia, and it looks like he walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, and it looks like he was murdered. Now, Mike Pompeo is asking the president to give the Saudis a couple of days. They say they're going to get to the bottom of it, but I don't really have any doubt that this guy was murdered by the Saudis, and I doubt it happened without the Crown Prince and other top people in Saudi Arabia knowing. If that's the case, you know, I know Democrats want to pressure Donald Trump into doing whatever they want to do and making this the biggest litmus test, but let me remind people that Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation took millions from the Saudis. She never brought up their horrific treatment of women, killing gays and lesbians. She never brought up one time the persecution of Christians and Jews in Saudi Arabia. And the same would go for look at how they treated Benghazi. But with that said, we already know the double standard exists. What do you think, Mr. Speaker?
I think first of all that the president is right to be cautious, to indicate clearly that we don't necessarily know all the things that are going on, and that I think it would be very foolish for us to break a relationship with Saudi Arabia, which is the key to containing Iran. But I think we have to get to the bottom of it. But let me also point out to folks, I'm just now working on a novel for next year called Collusion, in which the Russians decide they want to poison the U.S. Senate. If I were writing a novel about a Saudi journalist being killed, and the circumstances are just strange. They're going to kill him in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, knowing that the Turkish intelligence services monitor them all the time. They're going to do it with a team of 15 people. It's almost like if they did do it, and I'm not saying they didn't. I mean, clearly something terrible happened, and clearly
if they
the
did do it, they're sloppy and stupid, and, it's unbelievable the position they put any of their allies. And you're right, we have this unprecedented alliance against Iranian hegemony with the Saudis, Israelis, Emirates, Jordanians, and Egyptians. And, now that creates massive complications.
Well, but if you look at it, we've said pretty clearly we're not going to tolerate the Russians poisoning people in Great Britain. It's led to very specific sanctions. I could imagine a circumstance where if we do, in fact, decide that the evidence is overwhelming, and the Saudis have at least promised Secretary of State Pompeo that they're going to give him their full reports. Now, again, they may well be lying. But if in the end we discover that there are key people in Saudi Arabia involved, I suspect there will be sanctions. But there's difference. It's one thing to have sanctions. It's another thing, to go wild and break up the alliance and the relationship. And the Israelis have been very clear that they regard Saudi Arabia as such an important defense against Iran that they have urged us to be very careful in this process.
We've got to go, but, Mr. Speaker, it does complicate things, but people do remember that our arch enemy aligned with us, Russia, the former Soviet Union, to beat Nazism.
That's right. And I think sometimes, as I said, we have taken steps against Russia in concert with the British over trying to poison several people, but we didn't go berserk. I think we may have to take significant steps here and sanction some people and block some people from coming to the U.S. And I think, frankly, the Crown Prince had better clean this up, or he will not be allowed back in the U.S. for a long time.
All right, Mr. Speaker, thank you for being with us.